So thank you for having me. New Zealand is a wonderful place. I've already discovered that. A little bit more about myself. I am a recovering management consultant. I've spent time in the private sector as well as the public sector. Unlike some folks who work in government, I have a business degree, not a public administration degree. I love my friends with public administration degrees, but sometimes we need to inject a little bit of business into government as well. I will tell you that government is one of the most difficult places to affect change because it has a lot of structures and processes that by design prevent change. And not only that, but when I was a young man and my dad was teaching me about business, he would say, "Johnny, 80% of your problems come from 20% of your customers. Get rid of them," right? Because when you have a customer that's high demand and low return, what do you do in your business? You get rid of that customer. And that is not the case in government. You also have a board of directors that is looking to keep revenue level or decrease it and add services. And if you're in the business world, you say, that sounds a little like bankruptcy to me. But at the same time, it has caused us at the City of Asheville's IT function to really have to focus on the fundamentals of what makes technology sing and what makes technology go in any organization. When I got to City of Asheville, I immediately was confronted with the grim reality of what IT can look like when it's not doing well at an organization. I got there, and my staff runs in the door. This is my first day of work. And they say, "Jonathan, the systems are down." And I say, "What system?" "Oh, all of them." "You're kidding, right?" "No." So they had this monolithic, ERP, big mainframe type of system that had a lot of eggs in that one basket. And of course, you know the story, right? You put too much trust on something, even if you have a backup system. Data corruption goes from the backup system to the, to the standby or to the primary to the secondary, and then you have a big problem. So I went down to my new boss and I said, "Well, you can fire me now." And he said, "Get out of here. This is why I hired you." So you can tell that it was something of a problem. Customer service was a problem. They did an internal, to the city's credit, they did an internal customer service review, and IT was on the bottom. And when you are below the lawyers in service, that's demoralizing. So, of course, staff didn't feel good, and they were under siege. And it was a very difficult IT organization to come to. But of course, 10 years later, it's as Andrew said, Asheville punches way above its weight class nowadays. A recent article in Government Technology actually talked about Asheville, North Carolina, alongside Denver and New York City. So we're doing some really exciting things. That's the reason I throw this up there. Not, hey, we're so super awesome, although I do think the team is super awesome. But it's really to say that in the marketing world, we would say these are social proof points, right? That a lot of what we're doing, and not everything we do, right? I mean, we have, failures, screw-ups. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're doing some things that I think are fundamentally changing the conversation between IT and business. We're doing things with cloud computing, which requires you to step back and say, hey, I'm okay if somebody besides IT is controlling some technology, right? Because when you're putting something in Amazon, you're not controlling the infrastructure. We're doing things with digital business. You know, how many of you have been asked about digital business by your business partners, right? And digital business, of course, is the new kind of technology that we heard about this morning from Rich, where you're converting customers, you're getting closer to customers, you're working with your chief marketing officer. And my point is this, that IT can do all these things. And not only can IT get to where it needs to get, but it's actually not that hard to get there if you do the right things. However, I'm positive this is true in New Zealand. It certainly is in the United States. But if IT was a t-shirt and you had your business partners make a t-shirt about IT, right? It would look something like this, right? Take the SH out of IT. And this is actually a vendor shirt of a vendor that's here. And if you get with me tonight, I'll tell you who it is. But the question is, why is this funny? Why does this shirt even exist? Well, as my wife is so fond of telling me, in every joke, an element of the truth. So I have to be careful how I joke. And the truth of the matter is that most IT organizations are not looked on very well by the businesses that they work with. And I think the problem is two-factor, right? The problem is, yes, IT is under siege, and yes, IT is really called and tasked upon, perhaps too much, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think that IT sometimes has the wrong idea about IT. IT is not fundamentally about maintenance and ops. It's not fundamentally about reducing the cost of IT. That's like saying, you know, I have a job so that I can have a job, so that I can keep coming to work. No, we have jobs for other higher purposes. It's a snake eating its own tail. And IT is not about creating infrastructure. That may be a part of IT, but that's not the fundamental reason for IT. IT should be about changing the world. What do I mean by that? In a lot of cases, you're changing your business. In our case, we're making people safer. One project that we did made it so that when firefighters would get trained, they were much, much more likely to be in their service cover. And when they're in their service cover, all of a sudden that means it is much more likely that they will be able to get to your house when it's on fire in 5 minutes and 12 seconds, which is a critical metric to ensure that the fire is confined to the room and the contents. It means they'll get there faster when it's your brother or your uncle or your niece or your wife or your husband, right, has a problem. It means changing the conversation between government and citizens. If I told you that we've actually delighted citizens with technology that we've deployed, you might look at me like I'm on drugs. But the fact of the matter is, every single month when I'm downtown, I have somebody say, hey, Jonathan, that parking system that you guys installed, and we didn't install it, software as a service. We just enabled software as a service at the organization. All you have to do is text or use your smartphone to put money in the meter. It's easy, right? But when we enabled that, not only are citizens delighted, but they all, and and that raises your curb appeal, right? We all know about curb appeal when it comes to homes. It makes, the home, it's an amenity. But in fact, our parking revenue went up by almost 7% after this system was deployed, right? It makes sense. You're not looking for change. You're not driving away disgruntled that government is still making you use coins, in the internet age. And when's the last time you had your local government in the newspaper for something other than a scandal, right? This says how Asheville's open data push, and this is back in 2012, will change your life. Open data is the automation of open records and freedom of information requests, which I assume you have here in New Zealand as well. It's a big deal in the US. And it takes a lot of time and effort and often a lot of frustration, right? Because you're waiting a really long time. Well, what if we automate that? More citizen delight, and we're serving folks in the right way. So that's what I mean by changing the world. I wish there was one secret sauce. This is my favorite hot sauce. It's red hot. If you come to the States, I'll give you a bottle. I couldn't get any through customs, so. But it's not just one, and it's not just two, and it's not just three, and it's not just four. There are a heck of a lot of different ways that you have to approach the traditional IT equation and start thinking differently about IT. And one of the ways that I think a lot differently about IT is that there's this notion in the human world of Maslow's hierarchy. If your hair's on fire, if you actually have hair, you really are not able to think about doing much else other than put your hair out. And it's awfully hard to compose Shakespeare plays or paint a Sistine Chapel if you're worried about your survival. I submit to you that IT organizations are the same way, fundamentally. And instead of self-actualization at the top of Maslow's hierarchy for IT, we have digital transformation, right? That ability to start getting closer to the customer, that ability to actually be a part of the business. One of the speakers today said, hey, we have to stop thinking about the business versus IT. Boy, that was amen to that. Amen to that. And we don't need to be thinking, Rich this morning talked about, we don't need to be thinking about hiring a new chief something officer every time there's a new aha moment with business. Well, the aha moment right now is digital business. But IT can't get there. IT absolutely can't get there if IT is worried about funding, if IT is worried about leadership. I loved what Peter said about underinvestment in IT, right? That's a courageous thing to say. Most of us in IT say, well, we'll just do our best with what we have, but there's such a thing as underinvestment in IT. We can't get there if systems are not secure, right? And I'll talk in a little bit about one of the ways that we've been able to get our customers engaged into the security process. We can't focus on digital business without a human focus. We can't focus on digital business without operational excellence. Who's going to let you do it? Who's going to entrust you with their business if you have no credibility and IT is one big fire drill? If your systems are down for 2 days in a row, that could never happen, right? So, just to share some lessons learned in the last 10 years, and I guess this is my third job that I've had where I just end up being the guy that refactors IT. I tend to be a little OCD, and I tend to like change, and I tend to like doing things differently. But in the last 10 years, it's been sort of interesting. And I tend to think of it in short game versus long game, right? So short game, you have a very limited period of time before your credibility runs out as a new leader. Or if you're in an existing organization when you say, hey, we're making a change, you probably have 90 days to prove yourself, or people are just going to disengage. And so I really believe in the short game, and the most important thing about the short game is that, and this has been everywhere I've been for the last 25 years, as it turns out, prisoners make horrible employees. I mean, they don't, if you've got someone in shackles, they're going to do as little optional stuff for you as possible. And I have experience with this, and this has been the case at least my last 3 jobs. But go and read about this. You know, Daniel Pink wrote a wonderful book called Drive. And it's all about, if you're an employee, it's all about autonomy and mastery and purpose. And that's where it starts, right? I mean, we talk as CIOs about talent, 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 talent. But they've got to not be prisoners. And they've got to not be under siege. One of the first things I did, my friend Bill Treasurer wrote a wonderful book called Leaders Open Doors. And he talks about how leaders should be asking the question, not what keeps you up at night, but what makes you want to get up in the morning, right? And so when I got there 10 years ago, that's the question I asked. We had an exercise, and so to show staff that, hey, we can do this, we actually implemented some of the things that they said. Now, I mean, it was nothing goofy, like I want a trip to the Bahamas, but there's some things that are very easy to do, that are just fundamentally human. You know, I want to be able to come in a little later and leave a little later because I've got a disabled child that needs to get to so-and-so. There's some simple things, right? I love technology. I'm a geek. I'm an unapologetic geek. And I love technology, but I think if you're going to get to a new place with the IT business relationship, you must love people more. You must love people more. You've got to put the people before the technology. And, you know, it's not just about the workplace. It's about your customers. It's about asking your customers, how's IT doing? You know, you're sole source to us. We're sort of a monopoly. How are we doing? Let's ask the question. When we started asking that question 10 years ago, some of my staff said, that's not fair. Well, to channel my 83-year-old father, who told you life was fair? Right? It's not. But it's important to know how we're doing. And of course, in the beginning, the answer was, not very well. But thank you for asking. I think that the law of focus, right? My law of focus is if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And I think a lot of IT organizations, I don't know the reason. I think sometimes it's fear. I think sometimes it's overambitiousness. But IT organizations tend to do a not so great job at pushing back on the 100 billion projects on their plate, you know? And project discipline is the only thing, it's the only thing that will lead you to a higher success rate with projects. One person I work with talks about, you know, this soccer ball analogy. If you're trying to kick 50, 100 soccer balls down the field, you're going to be there long after the game's over, right? Ideally, you're kicking 1, and maybe you're kicking 2 or 3. Right? I think it's also important in the short game to hold your peers accountable. You have to hold them accountable for project discipline, right? If you want to do this and this, maybe you're not doing that and that, because we can do anything, but we can't do everything. If I told you how many accountability conversations I've had with my peers over the years, you would be shocked. But it's very respectful, it's very friendly. And, you know, diplomacy is the art of telling the other person to go get lost and enjoy the trip. But I think that most people appreciate knowing that they have a role in a business project, a business technology project that's not going well, right? There are no technology projects. There are only business projects with technology components. There is always accountability on the business end. And that accountability has got to be talked about, you know, and we do talk about it. We talk about our accountability. Because a funny thing happens when you tell people that you're perfect. They call you a liar, right? And one of the most important things we do is we report out every quarter, right? I talked about business school, not public administration school. And so I do everything by the quarter. We have now done, in 10 years, 40-plus quarterly reports to management. And one of the key assets in that quarterly report is this outage report. Probably don't have time to dig into it too much, but just like you think, you know, the medium bubbles are kind of a medium outage, the large bubbles are a large outage. The most important thing is that we count in real time. If a system's unavailable, we count in real time. We don't say 99.99% uptime. That is a crazy statistic because that means I can be down for 10 hours and still claim 99.99% uptime. Instead, we talk about here's how we impacted our customer in whatever way it is, in whatever scope it is. Amazingly, this has an effect on the folks who are taking care of the systems because they don't want to see one of their systems on the outage report. I think you also have to give the gift of accomplishment. And one of the ways we do that through project discipline is through our quarterly reports, we talk about what we got done, what we didn't get done for our top 5. We really do top 10. But when someone sees a green there, that means we got it done, just the way we said it would. That's the gift of accomplishment. And that's something that makes you want to get up in the morning, right? Because I came to work and I got something done, for crying out loud. Red, of course, is we didn't progress the way we wanted to, and yellow, of course, is we made some progress, but not as much as we wanted to. And I talked about the outage report, and I think it's important to differentiate repeated bad performance versus someone who is bringing bad news to the table, right? Because I have seen organizations where people go so crazy when bad news happens that employees just stop giving the information, you know, because management doesn't want to hear it, and I'm going to get in trouble. Again, as a boss, I will say to you that if your employees are not offering you critical feedback, it's probably not because you're perfect either, right? So in the long game, there are even more sauces that I think you need to add to the mix. And probably the most important one is that without credibility, you're not going anywhere, right? Because if you don't have that, if customers don't think that you care about them, they're not going to let you do anything cool. And if they don't think you have your stuff together, they're not entrusting their systems and their data to your staff. That's not happening, guys. Credibility is the coin. And this is our percentage of good and excellent customer service data for 4 quarters. And as you can see, it is above, I think that's 90%. I have horrible eyes, as you probably already figured out. But when I got to City of Asheville, that was not at the 90% mark, let's just say that. But this tells me that people are going to trust us, that they think we care about them, because we measure their perception of courtesy, helpfulness, fixes stay fixed, right? That is the most difficult one, because in the IT world, we like to fix things and then have them break more, right? But this tells me that we are liked well enough to be trusted. Like every other business, we in the business of IT must, not optional, must have sales and marketing, internal to IT. Here's what I mean. So, when's the last time you saw IT do a marketing poster? Well, as it turns out, this is just about the only mechanism that caused our end customers to start behaving differently with security. And how many of you think that the end user is one of the biggest problems in securing your network, right? Customers doing goofy things like typing their passwords in to Google Forms is a real problem. So this is a marketing ask, and it's a teaser kind of marketing. It's emotional. It shows a burnt-out room, and it makes the ask, the call to action, that if you don't want this to happen to your computer at home or at work, because we believe that organizational security extends to the home, right? So when people, when we're teaching people, we've sent out, shopping advice. They know we care about their home security as well as corporate security. That matters. And this kind of marketing gets them to actually go to the intranet and watch the stupid security video that they didn't really want to watch, but now they have a reason to do it. Okay? There's a lot more. One of the classic arguments, apart from who's more important, the CMO or the CIO, and it has the same answer, right, is which is more important, operations or innovation? It's a stupid question, right? Which is more important, your heart or your lungs? Because I'm going to take one of them. I just think it's crazy, and we need to stop having that conversation, because we need both at our organizations. Because an operationally excellent IT organization is still probably not as operationally excellent as the organization that's going to outsource you. If you're not adding value, you probably should, somebody probably should be considering that. IT tends to be extremely good at ducking and covering from sales folks, and that can be really destructive. It can be really bad, because last I checked, IT did not actually code most of the things that are in use at your organization, which is where the puck is now, right? And IT will probably also not craft all of the transformative technology that your business needs to go to the next level later. How do you think you're going to find out about it? I think every once in a while, you've got to do something that scares you, and I'll go a step further, that if you're not doing something that you come home at night and say to your partner or your spouse or whatever, I might get fired for this. You probably are not doing your job, right? And I would love to talk with you guys over drinks about a couple of those, but not on video. One case in point about not avoiding sales and doing something scary is our cloud disaster recovery project. And this is a cool, goofy graphic that you can't see, but that's all right. The point is this. My staff, as far back as like 2011, maybe, no, 2012-ish, was thinking, well, we have this huge disaster recovery problem for a number of reasons, and I've written a couple of articles for Information Week about this, so you can go search on it if you want. But the point is, we were trying to do something on our own. A vendor pitched us, right? It was a good pitch. I said, wow, this seems like what we're trying to do, and they're really describing the business benefit. Let's go for it. But still, it was scary as heck to think about, well, yeah, we're going to have production data for our water maintenance and our point of sale systems in the cloud. And I could tell them till I was blue in the face that, Amazon's security is probably better than ours, right? I mean, they have higher scale and they have more money and all that stuff, and they do it all the time. But what really turned the tide was mitigating, right? Doing a third-party audit of both us as well as the alternative. And when it came back clean for them and not as clean for us, I think that provided us that risk mitigation piece that we needed to move forward. I'll also add here that if we had no credibility with these lines of business, moving our stuff into the cloud for the purposes of disaster recovery, which, by the way, saved us a bunch of money, I don't think that would have happened either, right? Credibility is the coin of cool. I need a t-shirt saying that, right? So I think you have to love your industry, whether you're in baseball or you're in space travel or whether you're in winemaking or government. And frankly, I do love my industry, many parts of my industry, because every day I can come home and I can say, yes, kids, I helped firefighters analyze data, which is there on the left, and improve their standard of cover to where they actually can get to that fire in 5 minutes and 12 seconds, right? That's called a data project with meaning. And it's a fantastic fire department. It's very data-driven. It's one of my favorite customers at the city. But they trust us to help. And so I think you do need to make meaning, but you also cannot let your industry get in the way of you doing your job. When I did a cloud computing conference back in 2011, followed by an open data conference in 2012, there were people in my industry, in government IT, who, to my face, said, I don't really think that's your job. I don't really think you should be doing that. Except we learned things from other people that enabled us to up our game, that enabled us to start using things like cloud computing, to figure out that open data was really, really important to the business of government. Maybe not to the business of government for certain government employees, but to the people who pay our salaries. I didn't ask for permission to do a conference for cloud computing in 2011. I don't know what the answer would have been. But I can tell you that when you're doing unusual things, which I think you need to do to move the ball forward, sometimes you need to not ask. Sometimes you need to act. I think you need to work outside of IT. Whether you're working outside of your industry totally, as a startup weekend organizer, which is where I learned about Lean Startup, which has been critical for our product launches. I think you need to remember that today's best practices are tomorrow's belly laugh, right? Because what we're doing today is not what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Yesterday we were all about waterfall project management. Today, I'm not sure that we're all about agile, right? Because there are some things that I can't use Agile for, because I can't wait and see on a $6 million radio deployment where an officer might die if it goes wrong, right? Can't do that. But I think you need to remember that there are times to adopt new practices, and they might not be best yet, because nobody really knows yet. What gets celebrated gets repeated. We do an awards ceremony every year, and we don't limit it to IT folk, because that is a silo builder. We invite business partners. There on the right, that's a firefighter. In the center, that's someone from finance. On the left, that's somebody from building. And I think it's hugely important in repeating the result of, we like to work with IT. IT appreciates us. Don't we all want that? Doesn't that make us all want to get up in the morning? And when you celebrate something, it is repeatable. It happens again. Aspirational work, it's sort of like the innovation versus operations thing. Aspirational work has to happen. That's one of the things smart, motivated IT folks want to do. I cannot. My sister works for Google, used to work for Google. My brother works for Apple. I can't compete with that on a salary basis. That will never happen. I've got to give people meaning and aspirational work. So a lot of these projects that I've shown you are things that are just so super cool that you could not turn it down as an IT person. You know, who wouldn't want to be working in cloud, you know, on the cutting edge of cloud? Who wouldn't want to be doing, you know, some of these other things, using startup techniques in government? This is one of our most recent product launches. It's called Simplicity. It was an aspirational project. We could have just done an end-of-life transition of one system, but the amount of effort that it would have required to do something amazing and aspirational was about the same as just replacing the end-of-life product. And this is a government information portal. And it's really awesome, and you should go to the site, simplicity.asheville.nc.gov. There's a video. It operates a lot like Google. My father looked at the old site, and it was very enterprise IT. It had lots of, it was very busy. It was very cluttered. And he says, "Johnny, I don't know what to do with that." And then he looked at this one, and he goes, "Oh, that's like Google. I can use that." He says Google. So I show it to you as an example of government, you know, being able to do aspirational work that's outside the normal zone of what you would expect. And aspirational work is really, really important. And finally, there's just way too much to this for me to possibly cover in 40 minutes, right? And I talk about this kind of content on my blog at feldman.org. Which I'll have contact information on the next slide. But the most important thing that I'm going to tell you today is the answer to a question I got the other day when I was giving a talk about data. Somebody raised their hand and said, "Well, you know, our systems aren't really in good shape yet. It's not really a great time for us to be doing data analytics and product development based on data and all that." So they say to me, when should I start? The answer is now. And the answer is now for moving your IT organization in the direction of digital business and humanizing your IT organization. We are analog people in a very, very scary digital world. And the people who can make it human and the people who can bring meaning to it will be among the most valuable people on the planet. So please don't wait. The time is now. Thank you so much.